Let me tell you something. I've replayed that night maybe 1,000 times in my head. Every time, I look for the exact moment it went wrong. The 1 second where I could have turned left instead of right, kept my mouth shut, stayed on the floor like everyone else did. I never find it. Because there wasn't one. That's the part nobody believes. My name is Corin Vale. I was a fuel line mechanic on a place called Drift 9. Not a soldier. Not a hero. I fixed cracked pressure seals and cleaned corrosion off intake valves for 11 credits a shift, and on a good week I'd have enough left over to buy real coffee instead of the powdered kind. And somehow, on a cold rotation in the dead middle of nowhere, I killed the most powerful being in the galaxy. Congratulations to me, right? Just wait, it gets worse. Drift 9 wasn't a station you'd choose. It was a station you ended up at. Picture a rusted metal ring the size of a small city, spinning slow over a dead brown planet nobody had bothered to name. It just had a number. Everything out there had a number instead of a name. The planet was V77. The star was a dull red thing that never quite warmed the place up. And the station, 9 of them, had been built along that arm of the galaxy, and ours was the last one, the furthest out, the one they forgot to fund. The air always smelled like hot metal and old cooling fluid. You stopped noticing after a month. The lights hummed at a pitch that got into your teeth. Half of them flickered. Nobody fixed them because nobody cared, and nobody cared because we were 40,000 light years from anywhere that mattered. There were maybe 600 of us living there, humans mostly. A few Kesh traders with their long gray fingers and their soft clicking voices. Some drifters from species I couldn't even name. We all kept our heads down. That was the whole culture of the place. Keep your head down, do your shift, don't ask what's in the crates. Because Drift 9 had one real purpose. It was a fuel stop. Not for us, for them. For the ascendancy. I should explain about the ascendancy, in case you're one of the lucky ones who got to grow up not knowing. The Viharn ascendancy ran the galaxy, not one of the powers, not a major faction. They ran it. 10,000 years of unbroken rule. Every world you'd ever heard of paid tribute to them. Every trade route, every jump gate, every breath of clean air on a colony world, the Viharn took a cut. And if a planet ever decided it didn't want to pay, the planet stopped existing, not conquered, erased, turned to glass and left as a warning. I'd seen the recordings, everyone had. They played them in schools on the colony worlds. A green world one day, a black scar the next. That was the lesson. That was the whole lesson. The Viharn themselves were tall. Taller than any human, with skin like polished dark stone and eyes that didn't have pupils, just this deep amber glow. When one of them looked at you, you felt it in your chest, like standing too close to a furnace. They moved slow. They never rushed. Why would they? Nothing in the galaxy could make them. And at the top of all of it, above the fleets and the governors and the 10,000 years of glassed planets, sat one being. The Emperor. Kaeloth the Undying. That was his name, and they weren't being poetic. He'd ruled for 4,000 years personally. 4,000. Wars had been fought to kill him. Whole species had thrown themselves against him and burned. There were species that no longer existed because they'd tried, and the galaxy remembered them only as cautionary tales. He was, as far as anyone knew, unkillable. And on that cold rotation, for reasons I still don't fully understand, his ship docked at Drift 9. The alert came in the middle of my shift. I was down in the fuel spine, elbow-deep in a valve assembly that had been leaking coolant for 3 days, when the station-wide chime went off. Not the normal chime, the other one, the one I'd never heard before in 2 years there. 3 long tones, then a voice flat and automated. Imperial vessel inbound. All personnel to designated positions. This is not a drill. I remember I laughed. Just a short, tired laugh because I figured it was a malfunction. Some crossed wire in the ancient alert system finally giving up. An Imperial vessel. Out here, at the ass end of the galaxy, at a fuel stop that couldn't even keep its lights on. Then Tam came running down the spine. Tam ran the docking bay. Big guy quiet kept a photo of his kid taped inside his locker. He was never rattled. In 2 years I'd never seen him move faster than a walk. And here he was, sprinting, his face gray. Corin, get up now. What's happening? It's real. He grabbed my arm and pulled me up, and his hand was shaking. Tam's hand was shaking. It's the Emperor's own ship. It's the Sunhold. Kaeloth is on board. I stared at him. You're joking. I'm not joking. Look at your feed. I pulled up my wrist display. And there it was. The docking manifest, updating in real time, and at the top of it, in that cold imperial script that made your stomach drop just to read it. Vessel SUNHOLD. Class, Imperial Flagship. Passenger of note, Kaeloth, Emperor of the VHARN Ascendancy. My mouth went dry. Why here, why us? The answer, we found out later, was boring and stupid and had nothing to do with us at all. The Sunhold had taken damage in a jump, a bad gate, a misalignment, something in the drive core that started to fail. And Drift 9 was the nearest station with a fuel spine big enough to service a ship that size. Pure chance. The most powerful being in 10,000 years of galactic history, forced to stop at our garbage little station because his ship had a hiccup. That was it. That was the whole reason the galaxy changed forever. Bad luck. They cleared the whole station. Within 20 minutes, Imperial soldiers were everywhere. They'd come in on shuttles ahead of the Sunhold, and they moved through Drift 9 like water finding cracks, into every corridor, every bay, every room. They wore black armor that seemed to drink the light, and they carried weapons I didn't have names for, and they did not speak. They herded us, all 600 of us, pushed us into the main concourse, the big open ring at the station center, and made us stand there. No explanation, just stand, face forward, hands where they could see them. I ended up near the front. Tam was next to me. I could feel him breathing fast and shallow. Don't move, he whispered. Whatever happens, don't move, don't talk, don't look at them wrong, people die for less. I nodded, I believed him. Above us, on the concourse's high walkway, more soldiers took positions. And in the center of the ring, they'd set up a kind of raised platform, quick and efficient. And I understood that this was so the Emperor could pass through without having to walk among us. So his feet wouldn't touch the same floor as ours. We waited. The lights hummed. Somewhere a child started crying and a mother's hand went over its mouth, gentle and desperate, and the crying stopped. I have never in my life felt fear like that. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was 600 people so scared they were trying not to breathe too loudly. And then he came. I want to describe him properly, because I think it matters. Kaeloth didn't walk in. He arrived. That's the only way I can say it. The doors at the far end of the concourse opened, and the temperature seemed to drop, and this presence just filled the whole space before he was even visible. Like the pressure changes before a storm. Like the moment before something breaks. He was huge, taller than the other Viharn, and they were already giants. His skin was black, shot through with faint gold veins like cracks in stone with light behind them. He wore no armor. He didn't need armor. He wore robes, deep red, and they moved around him like they had their own current. And his eyes. I met them for half a second. Just half a second by accident when he swept his gaze across us the way you'd glance at a pile of scrap. His eyes were 2 points of amber fire, and there was nothing in them. No cruelty even. Cruelty would have meant he saw us as something. There was just nothing. We were furniture. We were the walls. We were less than the walls because the walls were useful. 4,000 years old. That's what I was looking at. 4,000 years of ruling, of glassing worlds, of ending species that annoyed him. And he was looking at us like we were dust on his sleeve. He moved toward the platform, slow, unhurried, his guards flanking him, that same silent black tide. And that should have been it. He'd have passed through, gone to the fuel spine, refueled, and left. We'd have stood there shaking for an hour and then gone back to our lives and told the story for the rest of our lives. The night the Emperor came to Drift 9 and we lived. That's how it should have gone. Then the girl fell. Her name was Nessa. She was 9. I found that out later. She was standing 3 rows ahead of me with her father, and she'd been so scared, so still for so long that her legs just gave out. Kids do that. She fainted. Fear does that to a small body, it just shuts down. She dropped and she stumbled forward as she fell, and she landed in the open space between the crowd and the platform. Right in his path. Everything stopped. Her father lunged for her, and an Imperial Guard's weapon came up, and the father froze mid-step with a rifle in his face. And Nessa lay there on the cold metal floor, a small crumpled thing, right where the Emperor was about to step. Kaeloth stopped. He looked down at her, this tiny human child, unconscious in his way. And I watched his hand move. Slow, casual. He gestured to the nearest guard, this small flick of 2 fingers, and I understood the gesture even though I'd never seen it before. I understood it in my bones. Remove it. Not her, not the child. It, remove the obstacle. And the guard raised his weapon, and the thing about these weapons was they didn't make noise, they just made a light, a brief white light, and whatever the light touched wasn't there anymore. He was going to kill her. A 9-year-old girl who'd fainted from fear. He was going to erase her from existence for the crime of lying in his path, and then he was going to keep walking like he'd stepped over a puddle. And here's the part I can't explain, the part I've stopped trying to explain. I moved. I didn't decide to. I want to be clear about that because people have called me brave, and it's a lie. Brave people decide. I didn't decide anything. My body just went, the same way your hand jerks back from a hot surface before your brain even registers the heat. There was a tool on my belt, a pressure spanner. Heavy thing, dense alloy about the length of my forearm. We used them to break loose seals that had fused under years of heat and cold. It weighed maybe 4 kilos. It was the least high-tech object in that entire concourse, in that entire situation. A wrench. Basically a wrench. I don't remember pulling it off my belt. I remember I was suddenly running, past the row in front of me, past the frozen father, and the guard's weapon was coming down toward that little girl. And I remember thinking one clear thought, the only clear thought in the whole thing. Not her. I hit the guard first, swung the spanner into the side of his helmet as hard as I've ever swung anything, and the armor that drank light apparently didn't do much against 4 kilos of alloy moving fast, because his head snapped sideways and his shot went wide, that white light punching a hole in the floor instead of the girl. He went down. I didn't stop to be surprised that it worked. Because the Emperor had turned. Kaeloth turned to look at me, and for the first time there was something in those amber eyes. Not fear. I'm not going to pretend the most powerful being in the galaxy was afraid of a mechanic with a wrench. It was something more insulting than that. It was interest. Mild, distant interest. The way you'd look at an insect that did something slightly unexpected. Oh, that one bites. He raised his own hand toward me, and I could feel it. I can't describe the sensation properly, but I felt this pressure build, this crushing weight starting to press in on my whole body, like the air itself was turning to stone around me. He was going to do to me what the light did. Slower, just for the novelty of it. And I was already moving. Because he'd made one mistake, the only mistake he made in 4,000 years probably. He'd turned to face me, which meant he wasn't watching where his own feet were. The hole, the one the guard's shot had punched in the floor when I knocked his aim wide. Drift 9 was old, I told you that, rusted, underfunded, and directly under that section of concourse floor ran a coolant main, a high-pressure line carrying supercooled fluid at a temperature and pressure that would freeze and shatter anything it touched. It was one of the lines I was always fixing, one of the lines that always leaked. The floor there was thin, corroded, patched over so many times it was barely holding. And a hole had just been blown in it. I did the only thing my mechanic's brain knew how to do. I threw the spanner, not at him, at the hole, at the weakened floor plate right at the edge of it, the stress point, the exact spot where I'd have hit it if I wanted to crack a fused seal. The floor gave. The coolant main ruptured, and a jet of supercooled fluid at 400 atmospheres of pressure erupted straight up, directly beneath the feet of Kaeloth, the Undying. I've been asked so many times what it looked like when the Emperor died. I always disappoint them, because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a great battle or a noble death or anything you could make a legend out of, though they made legends out of it anyway. It looked like an accident, which it mostly was. The coolant hit him and I heard a sound I'll never forget, this deep, cracking, splitting sound, like a mountain breaking. His skin, that black stone shot through with gold. It went white where the fluid touched, and then it fractured. The most powerful being in 10,000 years, and the thing that got him was a burst pipe in physics. The cold that could freeze steel to glass hit a body that had never once in 4,000 years been touched by anything he didn't allow to touch it. He didn't scream. I'll give him that. He looked down at himself, at the white fracturing lines spreading up his body, and there was that same distant interest in his eyes, right up until the fluid reached them. And then Kaeloth the Undying fell, and when he hit the floor he shattered. Silence. Complete, total, 600 people not breathing silence. The coolant main kept spraying for a second before the emergency cutoff kicked in and sealed it. The mist hung in the air, and on the floor in the frozen wreckage was the thing that had ruled the galaxy for 4,000 years, broken into pieces by a mechanic and a wrench and a station too poor to fix its own plumbing. I stood there, spanner gone, hands empty, breathing like I'd run 10 miles. The girl, Nessa, she was still on the floor, still unconscious, still breathing, her chest going up and down. She was alive. He was not. And I remember thinking, with this strange, hollow, disconnected clarity, oh no. Oh no, what did I just do? Here's the thing nobody tells you about killing a god. The galaxy doesn't stop. It doesn't pause to acknowledge what happened. There's no moment where the universe goes, well done. The pipe seals itself. The mist settles. And you're just standing there, a person in a body with a heartbeat, in a room full of people who watched you do the impossible and are now looking at you like you're the most dangerous thing they've ever seen. Because I was. Tam was the first to move. He grabbed the girl, Nessa, scooped her up off the floor and pulled her back into the crowd, back to her father, who took her with shaking arms and just held her, staring at me over her shoulder with an expression I couldn't read. Gratitude and terror all mixed together. And then the Imperial soldiers came out of their shock. I saw them raise their weapons, all of them. Every soldier on that concourse, everyone on the high walkway, weapons up, all pointed at me. I was going to die. I knew it with total certainty. I'd killed their emperor and I was going to be erased, and that was the end of the story. And honestly, standing there, some part of me thought that was fair. That was the deal. You kill the god's soldiers kill you. I closed my eyes. Nothing happened. I opened them. The soldiers were still there, weapons still up, but they weren't firing. They were confused. I could see it even through the black armor in the way they'd stopped, in the way a couple of them had turned to look at each other. Because their whole world ran on one thing, orders, the chain of command. And the chain of command had just shattered on the floor along with the rest of Kaeloth. Who gives the order to kill me now? Who's in charge? Every single one of them had spent their entire lives never making a decision, only ever following one, and the source of every decision they'd ever received was in pieces at their feet. They didn't fire because nobody had told them to fire. And in that gap, that tiny fracture in 10,000 years of certainty, An imperial officer, a Viharn tall with a commander's markings on her armor, stepped forward. Her name, I'd learned, was Vashka. She looked at the frozen remains of her emperor. She looked at me. And she did something none of us expected. She knelt. Not to me. God, not to me. She knelt beside the body and she reached out and she touched one of the fractured pieces. And she made a sound, this low, keening sound, grief and disbelief, and something that might have been, underneath it all, relief. And then she stood and she looked at her soldiers and she said, in a voice that carried across the whole silent concourse, "Stand down." They lowered their weapons. And I finally let myself breathe. And I thought foolishly, so foolishly I thought, it's over. It wasn't over. It was just starting. They didn't kill me. That's the first thing you need to understand about what came next. They should have. By every law and custom of the Ascendancy, 600 people should have died on Drift 9 that night, myself first and worst. That's how the Viharn worked. That's how they'd always worked. But Commander Vashka didn't give that order. And when I asked her, weeks later, why, she gave me an answer I've thought about every day since. She said, because for 4,000 years none of us has been allowed to think a single thought he did not permit. And you gave us a moment where he was not there to permit anything. And in that moment, Corin Vale, I discovered that I did not want to kill you. I discovered that I wanted to see what happens next. She paused. None of us had ever wanted anything before. Do you understand? We had never been allowed to want. I didn't fully understand then. I think I do now. But that's ahead of the story. That night on the concourse, Vashka locked the station down. Not to punish us, to protect us. Because she knew something we didn't. She knew what was coming. And she stood in the center of that ring, over the shattered remains of the being she'd served her entire life, and she told us. The Emperor is dead, she said. You do not understand what this means. In 1 hour, perhaps 2, the news will reach the deep court, and when it does, they will come. Who? Someone shouted from the crowd. Who will come? Vashka was quiet for a moment. The Emperor did not rule alone, she said. He had guardians, not soldiers like us. We are nothing. We are the hands, they are the knives. They exist for one purpose and one purpose only, to answer the death of the Emperor with the death of everything that caused it. She looked around at all of us, all 600 terrified faces. They are the Hollow, and they are the deadliest beings this galaxy has ever produced. Kaeloth built them over 1,000 years, one by one, each one a masterpiece of killing. There are 9 of them. And they're coming here, I said. My voice sounded strange to me. Vashka looked at me. They are coming here, they already know, they always know. The moment his heart stopped, they felt it wherever they are in the galaxy, and they are already moving. And when they arrive, they will not ask questions. They will not accept surrender. They will erase this station, this planet, and everyone connected to what happened here, down to the last living cell. She paused. That is what they are for. That is all they are for. Silence again. That terrible Drift 9 silence. How long? Tam asked. How long do we have? Vashka closed her eyes. The fastest of them, she said, could be here by morning. I need you to understand what kind of night that was. 600 people. A dying station at the edge of the galaxy. No real weapons. A fuel stop doesn't need weapons. No warships. No way to run, because the Sunhold was the only fast ship in the system and its drive was broken, which was the whole reason any of this had happened. We were trapped on a rusted metal ring, and the deadliest killers in the history of the galaxy were coming to erase us, and it was my fault. I sat in the mess hall with my head in my hands. People kept looking at me. Some of them with hatred. You killed us. You killed all of us. Why couldn't you just let the girl die? One of them was going to say it. I could feel it building. Others looked at me with something worse than hatred. Hope. Like I'd done one impossible thing, so maybe I had another one in me. Like I was some kind of answer. I didn't have an answer. I was a mechanic. I fixed pipes. I'd killed the Emperor of the galaxy with a burst pipe and dumb luck, and now 9 perfect killing machines were coming for us and I had nothing. Nothing. Nessa found me there. She'd woken up. Her father tried to keep her back, but she came over anyway, this little 9-year-old girl in a too-big jacket, and she stood in front of me and looked at me with these big, serious eyes. "You saved me," she said. "I got everybody killed," I said. "I shouldn't have said it to a kid. I wasn't thinking straight." She frowned, considered this with the total seriousness kids bring to everything. "But I'm not dead," she said, "so maybe everybody's not dead yet either." And I don't know why, but that got through to me when nothing else had. Maybe everybody's not dead yet either. She was right, we weren't dead yet. And I was a mechanic. And a mechanic's whole job, the only thing I'd ever been good at was looking at a broken system, a thing that was failing, a thing everyone had given up on, and finding the one part that could be made to work. The one valve, the one seal, the one pressure point where you apply force and the whole thing changes. I'd found one already, a coolant main, a wrench. I looked up at Nessa. Then I looked across the mess hall at Commander Vashka, who stood by the door, watching all of us. This alien who'd chosen not to kill me for reasons she was still figuring out herself. I stood up. "Commander," I said, "these killers, the Hollow, you said Kaeloth built them." "Yes." "Then they're machines, partly, built things, engineered." Vashka's amber eyes narrowed. "They are more than machines, but yes, in part they were made." "Made things break," I said. "Everything made can break, you just have to find where." I felt something cold and clear settling into me, the same feeling I got standing over a failed system I was about to fix. "You know these things. You served him. You know how they work, how they think, what they're built from, right?" "Some of it," Vashka said slowly. "Not all." He kept his knives close. "Some of it is more than I've got." I looked around the mess hall. 600 people, not soldiers, but how many engineers do we have on this station? Fabricators, people who build and fix. Tam answered from across the room. "Most of us, Corin, it's a fuel stop. We're all mechanics, welders, fab techs. That's all this place is." And there it was, the first thing that felt like hope. 600 people who fix broken things, I said, and 9 broken things coming to kill us. I turned to Vashka. "Tell me everything you know about the Hollow, every single thing. We've got until morning. Let's get to work." Vashka looked at me for a long moment, and then I swear I saw it, the corner of her mouth moved. Not a smile. The Viharn didn't smile, but the memory of one, the ghost of a thing she'd never been allowed to feel. "You are a very strange little creature, Corin Vale," she said. "Yeah," I said, "I get that a lot." The first one arrived at 4 a.m. station time. We heard it before we saw it. Everyone did. This sound came through the whole structure of Drift 9, up through the floors, into your feet and your teeth, a low, resonant tone, almost musical, almost beautiful and completely wrong. Like a bell rung underwater. Like grief given a sound. Vashka had told us about this one, the first of the Hollow, the fastest. They called it the Keening. "It doesn't have a body the way you'd think," she'd said, in the few hours we'd had to prepare. "It's a swarm, thousands of small units, each one barely larger than your hand, moving together as one mind. They flow, they pour through gaps. There is no door that stops them, no wall, no barricade. They find every crack and they come through it, and they take a form only when they've decided how to kill you. It killed a rebellion of 40,000 once, alone, in a single night. They found the bodies arranged in perfect spirals." "Great," I'd said, cheerful. But here's the thing. When Vashka described how the Keening moved thousands of small units, flowing, finding every crack, every engineer in that room heard the same thing I heard. Because we knew flow, we knew pressure, we knew what happens to things that move through gaps. We'd spent our whole lives dealing with things that move through gaps and try to kill us. We called it coolant. We called it plasma. We called it the leak in Section 12 that'll freeze your arm off if you're not careful. The Keening flowed like a fluid. And Drift 9 was a fuel station, which meant Drift 9 was, more than anything else, a machine for controlling where fluids went. So when the keening came pouring through the outer hull, and it did, exactly like Vashka said, finding 1,000 tiny gaps and flowing through them like liquid mercury, this shimmering silver tide spilling into the corridors, we were ready. We didn't try to stop it. You can't stop a flood. Any mechanic knows that. You don't stop a flood. You channel it. We'd spent the night opening valves and sealing others, rerouting the whole station's atmospheric and coolant systems, turning Drift Nine's own guts into a trap. Every corridor the keening flowed down, it flowed exactly where we wanted it to flow because we'd sealed off every other path. We herded it. This ancient, perfect killing swarm, and we herded it like water down a drain, straight toward the fuel spine, straight toward the main coolant reservoir. The same fluid that killed the Emperor. We had a lot of it. The whole point of Drift 9 was that it had a lot of it. I was there, in the control room over the fuel spine, my hand on the manual release, watching on the monitors as the silver tide poured into the reservoir chamber, filling it, thinking it had found us cornered, thinking it had won. Nessa was next to me. I told her to stay with her father. She hadn't listened. 9 years old. Now, she asked. Almost, I said. Wait for it to fill the chamber, all of it. We only get one shot. The keening poured in. That beautiful, terrible sound filling the whole station. The silver tide rising in the chamber, thousands of units, the whole swarm, the whole single deadly mind of it, flooding into the one room we'd left open for it. Corin, Vashka said quietly. She was watching too. It's beginning to sense the trap. It's slowing. Not yet. Corin. Not yet. The chamber was almost full. Almost. The last of the swarm pouring in. And I saw on the monitor the moment it understood, the silver tide suddenly churning, revering, trying to flow back out the way it came. Now, I said. And I hit the release. The blast doors slammed shut, sealing the chamber. And then I opened the coolant valves, all of them, full pressure, 400 atmospheres of the supercooled fluid that had shattered a god, flooding into that sealed chamber all at once, from every direction, nowhere to go, nowhere to flow. The keening had no cracks to escape through. We'd sealed them all. For the first time in its existence, the thing that flowed through every gap had nowhere to flow. The temperature in that chamber dropped past the point where anything survives. The beautiful, terrible sound rose to a shriek, and then cracked, and then stopped. Silence. I opened the chamber an hour later when the coolant had drained. The floor was covered in what looked like frost but wasn't. It was the keening. Thousands of tiny units, frozen solid, shattered, dead. The fastest of the hollow, the killer of 40,000. Killed by plumbing. Vashka stood beside me, staring at it, and she said, very softly, in a voice I'd never heard from her before. That is not possible. Yeah, well, I was shaking. I hadn't stopped shaking since the Emperor fell. We do a lot of impossible things around here lately. Nessa looked up at me. One down, she said. I put my hand on her shoulder. One down, I agreed. 8 to go. And the next one, Vashka told me, her face grim, would not be so easy. The next one didn't flow. The next one couldn't be trapped. The next one hunted. I didn't sleep after the first one. You'd think you'd be tired. I was past tired. My hands wouldn't stop trembling, and every time I closed my eyes I saw silver frost on a chamber floor and heard that beautiful drowning bell go quiet. But sleep didn't come. There wasn't room for it. There was only the next one. Because the next one was already in the system. Vashka told me the moment it crossed the outer marker. She had a way of knowing these things, some old imperial sense, some tuning to the hollow that 10,000 years had built into her people. She went still in the middle of a sentence. Her amber eyes dimmed, then flared. It's here, she said. Where? In the dark, watching. She turned to me, and for the first time since the Emperor fell, I saw real fear on her face. not the careful blankness of a soldier, fear. The second is called the patient one, and Corin, the trick you used on the first will not work twice. The hollows share a mind in a way. What one learns, they all learn. The patient one already knows what you did to the keening. It watched. It will not walk into water. Then what does it do? Vashka was quiet a long moment. It waits, she said. It finds the thing you love most, and it takes its time. Let me tell you about the second night on Drift 9. Nothing happened. That was the horror of it. The patient one didn't attack. It didn't pour through the hull or come screaming down the corridors. It got aboard. We knew it got aboard. Vashka felt it cross the threshold, a cold that went through the whole station, and then it simply vanished. Into the walls, into the ducts, into the 10,000 places a station like ours had to hide. And it started watching. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it. People began to whisper about a shape at the edge of their vision that was gone when they turned, a door that was open when they'd shut it. A tool moved 6 inches from where they'd left it. Small things, wrong things. It was learning us, studying 600 people, figuring out who mattered to who, mapping every bond and every weakness, the way I'd map a pressure system before I opened a valve. It was doing to us exactly what we did to machines. And on the third day it made its move. It took Tam's boy. I haven't mentioned that Tam's son was on the station. He wasn't. Most of the time Tam kept him planetside with family, safe, away from the fuel work. But when the lockdown came, when Vashka sealed everything, the boy had been aboard for a supply rotation. 6 years old. Same photo Tam kept taped in his locker. Same gap-toothed grin. The patient one took him from a sealed room with 2 adults standing guard, and it didn't leave a mark, and it didn't make a sound. And when we realized he was gone, there was a single line scratched into the metal wall where he'd been. Vashka read it, old Viharn script, the language of the court. It says, she told us, and her voice was flat with dread, come and trade. Tam went white, then he went for the door, and I grabbed him. Tam, stop, think. It has my son. I know. Let go of me, Corin, it has my. I know, I held him. He was twice my size, but I held him because I had to. Listen to me, listen, it wants you to come running, it wants us scared and stupid and alone in the dark where it's strong. That's the whole trap, that's what patient means. It's not going to hurt him yet, it needs him. He's bait, and bait stays alive until the hook is set. I made him look at me. We're going to get him back, but not by running into the dark. We do this like we do everything. We fix it. You can't fix this, Tam said, and his voice broke. This isn't a pipe. Everything's a pipe, I said. You just have to find where it's weak. Here's what I understood about the patient one, and it took me most of that terrible day to see it. Its whole strength was information. It won by knowing us better than we knew ourselves. It watched, and it learned, and it used what it learned. That was the weapon. That was the only weapon. Which meant the way to beat it wasn't to hide from it. It was to lie to it. I gathered everyone who mattered, Vashka, Tam, a handful of the best fab techs, and yes, Nessa, because that kid had stopped listening to instructions somewhere around the first hollow and I'd stopped trying. And I laid it out. It's been watching us for 3 days, I said. It thinks it knows us. It thinks it knows exactly how we'll react, who we'll send, where we'll go. Every plan we've ever made out loud in a room near a wall or a duct or a vent it heard. It's been listening the whole time. So, I looked around at them. Let's give it a plan to hear. We staged the whole thing, loudly, in the open, near every duct and vent we could find. We planned a rescue. A desperate, obvious human rescue, Tam and a team going down to the fuel spine where the trade was supposed to happen, weapons out, everything the patient one would expect from grieving, frightened people. We made it sloppy on purpose. We made it exactly as stupid as it wanted us to be. And while it watched that, while it committed itself to countering the plan it had heard, the real plan happened in total silence. Because there was one place on Drift 9 the patient one couldn't watch, one system it couldn't have mapped. The oldest part of the station, the original core, sealed off decades ago when they built the newer rings around it, full of dead corridors and abandoned machinery that didn't show on any current schematic. It wasn't in the station's records anymore, which meant it wasn't in anything the patient one could have accessed. I knew about it because I was a mechanic on a garbage station. And mechanics on garbage stations know where the old bones are buried. We'd hidden things down there for years. Contraband coffee, a card game, the good tools. And now one boy. While Tam played out the loud, doomed rescue in the fuel spine, I took 3 people through the dead core, silent, no comms, nothing the patient one could intercept, to where I'd figured out it had to be holding him. Because a hunter that patient wouldn't keep its bait near the trade site. It would keep it somewhere safe, somewhere central, somewhere it thought no one knew. The dead core, the one place it couldn't see, was the one place we could. We found the boy in the old atmospheric plant. Alive. Scared out of his mind, but alive. And the patient one wasn't there, it was down in the fuel spine, focused entirely on the loud fake rescue, waiting to spring a trap on a team that was never really coming. I got Tam's son into my arms, small, shaking, real. "Got you," I whispered. "Got you, kid, you're okay." And then the whole station shook, because down in the fuel spine, the patient one had realized it had been looking the wrong way. I need to tell you how we actually killed it, because it's the part I'm proudest of, and it's the part that taught me what we really were. We didn't outfight it, we couldn't. The patient one, when it finally showed itself, was a horror, a shifting thing of black glass and too many joints, fast beyond seeing, and it went through Vashka's soldiers like they were nothing. It was everything the reputation promised. If it had been a straight fight, we'd all have died. But it made the same mistake the Emperor made. It underestimated the room. The patient one had spent 3 days learning 600 people. It knew our faces, our bonds, our fears, but it had spent 0 days learning our station. Why would it? A station is furniture. A station is walls. That's how the Emperor saw us, and that's how his knives saw us too. They never understood that to us the station wasn't furniture. It was a body. We knew every artery of it, every nerve, every place it was strong and every place it was weak, because keeping it alive was our entire lives. When the patient one came for us in the dead core, it came into a place I knew better than my own hands, and I'd spent the loud rescue hours doing what I do, setting pressure, cutting off flow, building a bomb out of a station. The old atmospheric plant still had its original oxygen scrubbers and its original storage tanks, decades of concentrated, compressed oxygen, sitting forgotten. And I'd spent my career terrified of exactly this scenario, an O2 leak near an ignition source, the nightmare every fuel tech has, the thing we spend our whole careers preventing. I just made it happen on purpose. I let the patient one chase me into that chamber. Me, the bait this time. I ran and it followed, fast and silent and certain, and it backed me into a corner with nowhere to go, and I saw in its shifting glass face the same distant interest the Emperor had. "Oh, that one runs." And I looked at it, and I said the only line I've ever said in my life that felt like a movie line, and I've been embarrassed about it ever since. "You should have watched the walls." Then I cracked the O2 valve and threw the igniter and dove through the hatch Nessa was holding open, and she slammed it, and the old atmospheric plan of Drift 9 became, for about half a second, the inside of a sun. The patient one died patient. Right up to the end it thought it had me. 2 down. I lay on the floor of the dead core with my ears ringing and Nessa's face over me and Tam somewhere behind me holding his son and sobbing, and I thought, 7 left. And I thought, I can't do this 7 more times. Nobody can do this 7 more times. I was right, I couldn't have. Good thing I didn't have to. The truth came from Vashka on the 4th night, and it changed everything. She'd been quiet since the patient one. Withdrawn. I found her in the old core, alone, sitting in the wreckage, staring at the scorch marks where the second hollow had died. "You should rest, Commander," I said. "I cannot," she said. "I keep thinking about a thing I have never let myself think." She looked up at me. "Corin, do you want to know why there are 9 of them? Why the Emperor made exactly 9? I figured it was a lucky number." "There is no luck in what he did." She was quiet for a long moment. "The Hollow are not machines, I told you this, they are more. What I did not tell you, what I did not let myself remember, is what they are made from." She closed her eyes. "You know the Emperor destroyed species, erased them, turned worlds to glass. Everyone knows. He did not erase all of each one." Her voice was very low now. "From every species he destroyed, he kept one, the strongest, the last survivor of a murdered people. And he took that survivor and he hollowed them out, took everything that made them a person, their names, their memories, their love, their grief, and he left only the killing, only the strength. And he bound that strength to his will and made it his knife." She opened her eyes, and there was something terrible in them. "The Keening was the last of the Sethari, a people of the deep oceans who moved as one. The Patient One was the last of the Vihash, hunters of the long dark. 9 of them, Corin, 9 murdered peoples, 9 last survivors. He took the greatest grief in the galaxy and he made it into weapons." I sat down hard. "They're victims," I said. "They were victims. Now they are only the weapon he left inside the victim. The person is gone, hollowed out, that is the name, the hollow." She looked at the scorch marks. "When you killed the first 2, you did not kill monsters. You killed the last of 2 murdered peoples. A mercy, perhaps, but not a victory. I do not know what it was." And I sat there in the wreckage, and something turned over in my chest, and I understood the thing that would end all of it. "Vashka," I said slowly, "you said he hollowed them out, took everything that made them a person, left only the killing." "Yes. But you can't take everything." I was thinking out loud now, fast, the way I do when a broken system starts to make sense. "You can't. I've never met a system where you can strip it down to one function and have nothing left over. There's always residue, always something in the pipes, something in the corners the cleanup missed." I looked at her. "The person isn't gone, it's buried, under 4,000 years of the Emperor's will, and the Emperor's will is dead," Vashka whispered. "His will is dead," I said. "The thing holding them down is gone. It's shattered on the concourse floor with the rest of him. So what's holding the person down now?" Vashka stared at me. And for the first time since I'd met her, this ancient soldier, this being who'd served a god for centuries, looked at a human mechanic like he'd handed her something she'd stopped believing existed. "Nothing," she breathed. "Nothing is holding them down now." "Then we don't have to kill the next 7, I said. "We have to wake them up." I'm not going to pretend it was easy. The third hollow arrived that same night, and it wanted us dead, and it did not care about my theory. It was called the Verdict, a towering thing of white bone and cold light, the last of a species called the Uru, who'd been judges and philosophers before the Emperor glassed their world for the crime of questioning him. It came to deliver a sentence. Guilty. Death. It didn't flow and it didn't hunt. It simply walked toward us, unstoppable, certain, and everything it touched fell dead. We couldn't trap it. We couldn't burn it. We tried. 6 of Vashka's soldiers died buying us minutes, and the minutes ran out, and the Verdict backed all 600 of us into the main concourse, the same concourse where the Emperor had fallen, and raised its hand to pass sentence on the entire station at once. And I stepped forward. Just me, a mechanic, between the Verdict and everyone I'd gotten into this mess. I didn't have a weapon. I'd figured out by then that the weapon was the wrong idea. So I stood there in front of the last judge of a murdered people, and I did the only thing I had left. I talked to it. "Your name was Uru," I said. "You were a judge, a real one, not this. You cared about truth, about what was fair. He took that from you, the one who's dead now, the one whose death you're here to answer. He took a being who cared about justice and he turned it into a thing that just kills whatever it's pointed at. That's not justice. You know that's not justice. Somewhere in there, you know. The verdict paused. Its hand, raised to kill us all, paused. He's dead, I said, quieter now. The one who made you into this, he's dead. I killed him. And I'm not proud of a lot of things right now, but I'm not sorry for that. He erased your entire world, your whole people. And then he wore your grief like a glove. I took a breath. You don't have to finish his sentence for him, Judge. He's gone. The trial's over. You're free. Silence in the concourse. 600 people not breathing, again. And the verdict, this towering thing of bone and cold light, lowered its hand. And it made a sound. A long, cracking, terrible sound, and I thought it was going to kill us after all, and then I realized what the sound was. It was grief. 4,000 years of buried grief coming out all at once. The judge, remembering it, was a person, remembering its world, remembering everything the emperor had hollowed out and buried under his will. The verdict knelt in the center of the concourse, and it wept in the way its people wept, this awful beautiful sound, and Vashka went to it, and knelt beside it, one servant of the emperor comforting another, and I stood there and watched the third hollow come back to life. 3 down, except it wasn't down, it was awake. And it turned its cold, burning eyes on me, and it spoke in a voice like a landslide, and it said, "The others are coming, my kin, my fellow prisoners. I will help you free them, but some of them human, some of them are too far gone, some of them will not wake, and those you will still have to kill." It bowed its head. "Give them peace if you cannot give them freedom. That is the only justice left." "I will," I said, "I promise. I'll tell you the rest quickly, because the shape of it is the same, and the shape of it is the whole point." The fourth hollow woke. The fifth. Each one arriving certain it would kill us, each one meeting not a weapon but a station full of people who refused to see it as a monster. Vashka and the verdict stood with me now, and it turns out the thing that could reach a hollowed-out victim was the sight of its own kind, freed, alive, saying, "You can come back too." The sixth didn't wake. Vashka had warned me. The last of a species called the Moltrency, so completely hollowed that there was nothing left to reach, only the killing, and it nearly took the whole station apart before we stopped it. We gave it peace, the way the verdict had asked. I won't pretend it was clean. I won't pretend I slept after, but we gave it peace. The seventh woke, the eighth woke. And the ninth. The ninth was the one the emperor had made first. The oldest, the strongest, the last of the very first people he ever erased, 1,000 years before I was born, so buried under his will that it had almost stopped being separate from him at all. It arrived last because it had come the farthest, and it arrived certain, and it was the closest thing to the emperor himself still walking in the galaxy. And when it came for us, all the woken hollow stood between it and the station, the verdict, and the others, 6 freed prisoners of a dead god, standing together for the first time in 1,000 years. But it was me the ninth wanted to talk to. Me it walked toward, through its own woken kin, until it stood over me the way the emperor had stood over Nessa. "You," it said, in a voice that was almost the emperor's voice because it had carried him inside it for 1,000 years. "You broke the will that held the galaxy. Do you know what you have done, little thing? Do you understand the size of it?" And I looked up at it, this last, first, worst of the hollow, and I was so tired, and I told it the truth. "No," I said, "I have no idea. I'm a mechanic. I fixed pipes for 11 credits a shift. I didn't want any of this. A little girl fainted and I couldn't watch her die. That's all. That's the whole thing. That's everything I did. I didn't plan to change the galaxy. I just couldn't watch a kid die in front of me." I swallowed. "And I can't watch you stay a slave either. So I'm asking you the same thing I asked all of them. He's dead. He's been dead for 6 days. Whoever you were before he made you into this, that person is still in there, under all of it, and they're free now, so come back, please come back." The ninth hollow stood over me for a long, long time. And I felt it then, the pressure I'd felt from the emperor on the concourse, that crushing weight, the whole strength of 1,000 years of killing, gathering to erase me. And then it stopped. And the ninth hollow, the first knife, the oldest grief, the closest thing to the Emperor left alive, sank to its knees in front of a mechanic. And in a voice that was finally, after 1,000 years, its own, it said, "I had a name." Yeah, my eyes were burning. What was it? And it told me. And I'm not going to write it here because it told me quiet, just for me, and some things you keep. 9 down. 9 free. The killers didn't come for us after that, because there were no more killers. There was no more emperor, no more will, no more chain of orders reaching back to a being who'd ruled for 4,000 years and glassed 100 worlds. It ended on a garbage station at the edge of the galaxy, with a burst pipe and a fainting girl and a mechanic who just couldn't watch a kid die. The ascendancy fell, not in fire. It just stopped. The whole thing had been one being's will, all the way down, and when that will shattered on the concourse floor, everything built on it came loose. The soldiers stopped taking orders because there were no orders. The governors woke up one morning and found they'd been sleepwalking for centuries. 10,000 years of empire, and it turned out none of it had ever really wanted to exist. It had only ever been made to. The galaxy had to figure out how to want things again. That took a while. It's still taking a while. I hear it's messy out there now. 100 worlds all trying to decide who they are, arguments and mistakes and false starts, the loud, clumsy noise of people making their own choices for the first time. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Vashka stayed. She commands the defense of Drift 9 now, though there's nothing to defend it from anymore. She says she stays because she finally has a choice about where to be, and this is where she chose. I think she stays because of the girl. Nessa's kind of adopted her. You should see it, this 9-year-old and this ancient alien warrior, playing cards in the mess hall, Vashka losing every time because she still can't quite let herself bluff. The verdict comes and goes. It's building something out there, some kind of court, a real one for all the freed worlds to bring their arguments to. It says the galaxy will need somewhere to be fair now that fairness is allowed. It visits when it can. It always finds me. It always says the same thing: you kept your promise. I did. I gave them all peace. Freedom to the ones I could reach, peace to the ones I couldn't. That was the only justice left, and I gave it, all of it, everyone. People come to Drift 9 now, from all over. They want to see it. The station where the galaxy changed. They want to see the concourse where the Emperor fell and the fuel spine where we drowned the Keening, and they want to meet me. They call me things I'm not. Liberator. Hero. The wrench of the 9 worlds, which is my least favorite one and Nessa's favorite, which is why it's the one that stuck. They ask me how I did it. How a fuel line mechanic killed a god and freed his 9 ultimate killers and brought down 10,000 years of empire. And I always tell them the same thing. I didn't kill a god. A god killed himself the moment he decided a child's life was less than a clean floor. All I did was be standing there with a wrench. And I didn't free the hollow with strength. There wasn't a weapon in the galaxy that could have done it. I freed them by refusing, even once, to look at a suffering thing and call it a monster. That's it. That's the whole secret. That's the only thing I know how to do that the Emperor in 4,000 years never learned. I looked at broken things my whole life and asked what would fix them instead of what would destroy them. Turns out that works on more than pipes. So congratulations to me, right? I killed the galaxy's Emperor, and his ultimate killers came, all 9 of them, the deadliest beings the galaxy ever made. And not one of them was a monster. They were just people buried alive. And somebody finally came to dig them out.